Hi everybody, my name is Violet Chantal, and today this is a very off-the-cuff video. I don't have any notes for this. I was gonna wait, because I do want to make this, I did want to make this video eventually. I was gonna do this next year for the 5-year anniversary of After Hours by The Weeknd, but I think I'm gonna do it for the 4-year just because I feel like what this album means to me and the impact it's had on my life. I really feel like the best way that I can really express all those feelings and memories and just the overwhelming power that this album still has with me, I think the best way is to just do it now. And so, happy 4-year anniversary to After Hours by The Weeknd. I haven't really made a video ever just about Abel and his music and XO. Just like, just making it. Like, I've always made it when there's new content, or just like reviewing or talking about new music or seeing him live and stuff like that. I've never made a video just talking about him for the sake of talking about him, and so this is gonna be the first time I'm ever doing. This is just some reflections about the album and that era that I have nowadays. And yeah, no, just going back to 2019, end of November, and what was it, like November 23rd? Or was it 25th when Heartless came out? It was something like that. Then 2 days later, Blinding Lights came out. That time of my life was a very, very specific time period. 2019, when I recorded those videos, a lot of people do not know this, but me and those After Hours videos, all of them except for the Super Bowl reaction video, I was 16 years old. I was 16, and I was going through a lot of pain at the time, and a lot of isolation and loneliness, and just I was so just consumed by my own thoughts, and I really had to like live and like drown in them so intensely. And for anybody or who deals with that, it can be really overwhelming. But especially when you're 16 years old, trying to figure out your life, when your life has no direction really, was a lot. And around that time, I was kind of getting things together. And so when those two songs came out and I did the YouTube videos for them and they did really well, it was this just like, it was like a massive just like gratification feeling for me of like, oh, like, things will be okay. And, like, I'll be okay and all this stuff. And just those songs, like, just like that time period, that was like the best time of my life, honestly. Like, there's like a long period of time, that was just incredible. Like, I saw my friend Flim Fan 599 around that time, and then I saw my friend Kevin Falk a little bit after, and things are going really good for me in my personal life, and it was just great. And then, of course, of course, for everybody, they got affected, of course, by this. But the pandemic happened, and things sort of unraveled again. For me, and of course, for many of others, I don't want to be like selfish about that or be self-centered about a pandemic. And that album, came out at a time where it's like, I don't want to like romanticize it too much because the pandemic was one of the worst things that has happened in the history of humanity, of course. But the thing about that album is if there was going to be any album where it was going to be released around the very specific time that everybody was going through, After Hours is one of the most perfect ones that could, because After Hours is where Abel has always done this throughout his entire music, but I really feel like starting a little bit with My Dear Melancholy, but really with After Hours, he is so vulnerable and so fearless with what he's expressing and talking about his emotions and going for new directions and new sonics and new sounds. And just this overall isolation feeling and just being trapped and consumed in the own darkness, and like you can't escape it, and it's like repeating in like a pattern, and just like trying to tell yourself like I don't need it anymore. And that time of life for a lot of people with that isolation, a lot of self-realization happened, and I think that's part of why the album connected with so many people, and myself included a little bit at the time. But for After Hours, though, like as much as I loved the album so much, and like the singles leading up to it were such beautiful memories for me, After Hours for me, like I always like really liked it, but that full like first like year and a half of the album's like life, I really liked it, but I didn't like love it like everybody else, which is totally okay. Like, I don't need to like love things as much as everybody else does. But those feelings that people were having on the album, because I admire Abel so much, I definitely wanted to experience them also for myself, but I wasn't, which is again okay, but I really wanted to be able to latch onto to it stronger. I have been able to do that in the last few years, and I think a part of it definitely just deals with like being older now. I'm 20 years old now, just having more life experience, of course. That album is a very sophisticated, like a, I don't want to call it I guess like adult. Yeah, I just feel like that's such a basic word. My apologies. It's a very like sophisticated album in terms of what it's talking about and exploring, and it's dealing with really heavy themes so face on, and it's just so blunt with what it's saying. And I feel like it it really definitely takes you being older and appreciating those lessons, as painful as they can be, to really delve and dive deep into the complexities and just the feelings that a work like that can give you, especially one that is so honest and just like bold and daring, and visually too, just so just like gritty and like grimy and bloody and chaotic, and it's just going again and again and again. There's no ever ending. It's just like a cycle being repeated and repeated. There's just a lot about that album that I related to back then, but now especially being older that I really related to. But the album and just like the world of After Hours for me really clicked with me and made sense. And I've wanted to talk about this a little bit in terms of my connection with Abel's music and his work. And I feel comfortable getting into it in this, just because I'm so open about it nowadays, and I'm very like I'm proud of who I am. But ever since I began my transition in 2021, there were a lot of very specific experiences and moments that I was going through around that time, that I was really struggling to find something to like relate to with it, and just feel like comfort and safety and just like a general understanding of just the feelings that I was going through. And I've always found a lot of aspects of Abel's music like relatable, but I've said this to a lot of people, and I know for a lot of people this won't make sense, um, but his music has become a lot more relatable now that I've transitioned, than it was when I was, living as, a man. Like generally, like I understand that like a lot of Abel's music definitely deals with like toxic masculinity, and just like the relationship dynamics between like a man and a woman, and just like power dynamics in the type of relationship like that. But I totally understand that. But for me though, there's so much about it that I feel like I have just allowed myself to just open up and like be like I relate to this, or like be honest about the fact that I've had experiences that like I can definitely like see myself, reflecting on and what he's talking about, in his music, and especially After Hours. I look back at, and I'm just able to like dissect them the most in a certain way, just because I can like really just like latch on to things that I wasn't able to before. And um that album, just like when I was going through the beginning of everything, like the end of 2021, like beginning of 2022, where I was really trying to like figure out like how I was going to like go about like, beginning my transition. That album, After Hours, was there for me in a lot of ways that um I really needed. Uh, and I haven't really ever talked about this really publicly, but before, just because like the few people I've told this, they're like that's kind of sad, and I'm like I understand, but my favorite song of all time is Until I Bleed Out. Like I have the poster for it right there of the music video. That's my favorite song of all time. That's my favorite Weeknd song. Um, that song, it saved my life. Like it straight up did. Like I was going through like a lot of stuff in 2020 that like there's a lot of things about that song I latched on to, but in 2021, like that song spoke to me in ways that no other piece of art has ever spoken to me. And as much as like I've connected to like Abel's music, like that song definitely is on a level that n- only the title track of After Hours honestly reaches. Like that title track and that back to back is the most overwhelming experience of art that, I'm only 20, so who really knows, but to be a bit dramatic about it, I might ever have. And my most overwhelming and just like cathartic experience, if that's the right way to say. I don't think I said that right, but you know what I'm trying to say. Experience I'll ever have of art, and like those like works like genuinely spoke to me so much and allowed myself to address the most painful emotions I was going through. In ways that I genuinely don't think I would be able to process like without his work. Like that song's my favorite song of all time just because like I I latch onto it still so much. Like when I struggle with feelings that song makes me. Um, I guess like I can relate to, if that's a good way of saying it. I just like I've always found the most comfort in art and like the darkness of it. And that's something I've always been like ashamed of until like recently. Where nowadays like that's just like what I latch onto, and that's what I connect with in a lot of ways. And that song I really really like feel it, and like there was a lot of emotions, again, just repeat it one more time and I'm going in circles about it a little bit, but like I was going through specifically around that time in my life where that song and the title track of After Hours, where I was going through so much painful realization and looking at myself and acknowledging deep flaws that I had, but also recognizing abuse that I had been through. Um, where like it just like I really like I needed it, honestly. Like I needed it, and like those works were there for me. And they were just like comforting in a way, and as much as like the songs are so sad and like bleak, and I'm so grateful for those works. And it was really really nice when Dawn FM came out, because I was very much trapped in like that purgatory sort of setting where it was like I was recognizing everything, and I was just like stuck in a setting where it's like I just gone through like this whole like like hell sort of like landscape, and it was like now I'm here, and it's like you're like you like the healing is like there, but it's like the beginning of it is like you're trying to like hold on to it, but it's like just like letting yourself just feel it. And those works made me start feeling that, like when at the end of in Phantom Regret, like when Jim Carrey talks about like look at the flowers, they're just they're not trying to look right, they just open their petals and look to the light, like like those songs help me do that, honestly. And I'm just so like grateful for it, and those songs genuinely like saved my life. I say that about a few things, and like I do mean it, but like though specifically Until I Bleed Out, like that's the most relatable song I've ever heard. I'm so just like glad that I was alive to like witness like the freshness of it and the newness of it, and be able to connect to it like in that sort of way. It's just phenomenal. To focus on some other songs on the project also, quickly, I want to talk about what I feel like actually is Abel's most underrated song ever, Snow Child. I think that's one of the best songs that he's ever made. One thing about my reaction to that album that I have always hated is when he talks about very beginning, he's probably when I was 16, if I didn't make it, then I'd probably make my wrist bleed. Like I had this very like dramatic being like, oh, like don't say that makes me sad, Abel, like reaction. And I only reacted like that because I was 16 and I felt exactly like that at the time, and I was scared and overwhelmed of trying to convey that. Being that age, when that album came out, and then in my personal time listening to it, like hearing that and just hearing like just like how those feelings just like encompass like the growth of like everything that was happening, and just like the how those feelings were like consuming Abel, and just like growing and growing, but it's like leading you back to a point where you're reflecting on all of this, and where like you came from such like a place of desperation and a place of hopelessness, and like ending. He just speaks so like in the moment and After Hours, but really especially on that song, like reflecting on like where it began, to where you are currently, and just like very specific things that you latch on to in terms of like how you're feeling about certain things. I think is just so powerful. And then how that transitions into Escape from LA, like, you know, with like the ending of like XO'TWOD, you know, like, you know, leaving into the night or whatever, and how it goes into Escape from LA is just absolutely brilliant. And the storytelling in After Hours is just immaculate and incredible. And Escape from LA, I also think is one of his very best songs. I think the last 2 minutes of that song are absolutely incredible. You know, like I definitely, when I first heard it, like I was a bit like, oh, that's one of the craziest things he's ever said. Which it definitely still is, like that whole like, you know, verse and stuff like that. But like genuinely, like it just like it's so just like it's just stating like what happened, but it's like when you just like let yourself like feel like the emotions of what he's just trying to say, like encompassing them like for yourself, and just like, you know, just like your own interpretation of it with the rest of the album, it just like it's just like I don't know how to describe it, but it's just like I just like I hate to say it, but this I just like get it in a certain way. And then when it transitions into Heartless and then Faith and then especially Blinding Lights, like just the evolution of just all these ideas and just like the comfort of a person and them doing things like for you, for like your own like pleasure, but it's like you're so broken, all this stuff, um, is just so captivating and riveting and relatable also, you know, like there's a lot of reasons why I like personally like connected this album, and just like I I think it's just absolutely just an incredible story and like progression wise. And definitely too, like one thing I gotta say is like as I've gotten older, I appreciated it back when it came out, but one thing I really started appreciating is just like how just like cohesive this album is, while just being so just like different in sound for him in a way. Like of course like it has influences of like what he was doing like on Starboy and like definitely My Dear Melancholy and stuff like that. But like just like hearing just like the sound evolve and respect the influences, but also evolving them in a modern day aesthetic and like his own aesthetic and his own style and words, is just beautiful. And there's so many different sounds on this album. They come together so beautifully. It's such like like a daring project, such like a bold project. It reminds me a lot of Beauty Behind the Madness, like that. And I would say it's definitely a more cohesive project than Beauty Behind the Madness, but Beauty Behind the Madness is how I got introduced to Abel. I absolutely love that album still. And so just seeing him continue to do sounds like and like, you know, atmospheres and pieces like that and like, you know, vignettes and whatever and just like overall works, um, you know, I think is just incredible. And like, you know, he's not afraid to do things that, you know, outside of the norm and like pop and, you know, like R&B music. And I just think it's so just inspiring still to this day, you know, going back like 4 years later and just like living, you know, in that world, and just how just well that it is aged, and just like the production is just so just like immaculate and just so precise and just so like glittery, and you can just feel it. It's so like tangible. And you know the atmosphere this album creates, especially with like Alone Again and Too Late, and just how it progresses into like new sounds and new just like overall like ideas and aesthetics, it's just absolutely incredible. It's such like a varied project, and it keeps it fresh and exciting, and I just think it's absolutely fabulous. And I know also one thing too I gotta say, it took me a little bit to really fully appreciate it. It took me into like 2022 when I got more into like horror, giallo, like exploitation sort of works. I'm not really into stuff like that really as much nowadays, admittedly. But like when I was delving into them like a little bit, like going back to the music videos, like the influence those sort of filmmaking have on those is absolutely phenomenal. Like Abel's cinema influences are, he just like the way he just incorporates all of them by split, like it's still like his own vision and just like distinct sort of like musicality to it all, and just like the grandness of it all, and just like the visual like gravitas and like despair and just like bloodiness of everything, and just like the shock of things, like it's just absolutely like brilliant. And just like sort of like the visual movement of it all, like with the songs and how everything is edited, and like the aspect ratio changes and like the wobbliness of things. Then when you get to like, you know, Too Late and Save Your Tears, when now he's like singing in them, and like I think it's just absolutely brilliant. I think they're his best music videos. My favorite ones besides that are probably the Beauty Behind the Madness ones, but I I think After Hours for me, just visually, is just so distinct, but you can see those influences so beautifully, but still it just feels just so just like profound and just so overwhelming. This album just speaks to me on a level nowadays that I'm just so grateful to have it. Like, I've learned so much from myself, of being able to be open and vulnerable with myself, like, through the music, and I'm just so grateful for it. Just seeing like the connection that we all have to, like, Abel and his work, it's just such like a beautiful thing to see. And the success that he got from this project definitely is just absolutely insane to this day. Like, I never really talked about it on here, like, a little bit in the comment section, but like Blinding Lights, like, and Save Your Tears also, like, it is just like, but specifically Blinding Lights, like, the success that had is one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen in art. Genuinely. That song is a masterpiece. It's one of the greatest songs of all time. This album is one of the greatest albums of all time also, but that song is one of the greatest songs of all time. Like, regardless of like the success it had, like, it just is absolutely perfection, and it's euphoria, and just so just like shiny and stunning, and just so like emotional, and just like conceptually and lyrically, it is just absolute, just, it's like euphoria, like that song. It's absolutely incredible, and it's just, I'm just so blessed that I was able to experience it, like, when it was new and it was fresh, and just seeing it evolve into the success that it had was so beautiful to see, and just the connection people had to it is just is crazy. It's crazy, and it's beautiful. This really was, to me, the last thing I think I'll say of what I really love about this project now, like, 4 years later, is just like, I really feel like it began on My Dear Melancholy. Like, I love Abel, I love all of his music, but like, really on this and Dawn FM, just, there's a certain just like reflection on things, and a certain feeling that he's conveying in the music. Of course, I just like growing up and maturing is like the baseline to say it, but just like the way that he just like says his words, and just like is so like more just honest and vulnerable than he ever has been before, I think just makes this his most profound music yet, and I love that. It feels so like, as a listener, like you feel in a way like safe with it, because it's so like real and honest. And even if there's things that you can't relate to, like, I definitely cannot relate to like everything that he talks about, definitely not. Absolutely not. And but I just feel just like the things that I feel seen, and like I was talking about, I feel so seen, just because it's just so just like genuine and real and authentic. And one thing that he said, I think to Nav, he said this, and I took this with inspiration from my last Album Wonder album that I just made. Is you just have to be like as honest as you can be in your music. And he has always been like that, but I really feel like he's just allowed himself to really, really address himself in a way, and he always has done that in all of his music, even if it was incredibly subtle in some ways at the beginning, and very direct in other ways, but like just like how it is now, and just like that maturity and growth, and just like coming into your own as a person more, and like this album is at the very end of like his 20s and now into his 30s, just like hearing everything is just so, I'm just like so proud of him. I think it's just marvelous. And I this last Weeknd chapter, I'm very ready to see where it goes. I'm very ready. And so yeah, this is definitely just a bit of a ramble. But I've always wanted to just like express some of these feelings. And After Hours, I do want to do like actual like breakdown reviews, or just like my own like overall like real like reviews on all of his projects. But I think I'm gonna wait, honestly, until like the Weeknd like concludes as a whole to do that, honestly. So I really want to be able to like go back to those projects when like the whole Weeknd like era is like concluded in the journey, and just kind of like look at everything like through that kind of lens. But I really wanted to convey like these emotions I feel about After Hours now, in a video, because it speaks to me in a way that it just didn't at the beginning, and I've never really like fully like addressed it also. And so yeah, and also one more thing, this is so random, but the Super Bowl performance, just because we gotta quickly mention that, is one of the best moments of my life. I just like that performance was just the coolest thing ever, and just a perfect way to end that After Hours era. Like, I know like the Save Your Tears rollout kind of happened after that with like the Ariana Grande remix and the performances, but like for me, like that was like the end of After Hours. And just such a beautiful way to go out, and just like again like just like fully just like defined just like the gratification and just fulfillment that album gave to so many people, and especially for Abel and his team. And so yeah, so with that now, that is that. I hope everybody is doing okay, and doing safe, and doing great and healthy. Sending to all their loved ones and family. And yeah, and thank you to everybody who watched this video. It's nice to be back making another Weeknd video. Hopefully there's more of them soon. I do have an idea actually for one other one I can do soon. But we'll see whenever that comes out. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see y'all later. Bye.